All right. For the audience that does not know you, feel free to introduce yourself.
My name is Jeremy Koko. I'm known as Jeremy Koko on all socials, yokokofit, if you want to really be a little bit more specific. So what I do is a little bit more of like the fitness side of things, giving people tips, mostly those people who are more like beginners, really. That's mainly like my key focus there. Other than that, that's what I basically do. Like I enjoy doing that, but I do that in a little bit of more of a different structure than what like traditionally most people do, being completely strict and like giving you too much information, you know. But I play around with it. I try to be a little bit creative and playful with it to make it easier to digest information.
So tell us, how did you get into this? What sparks a man to go, you know what, I'm gonna help everybody I can,
Yeah.
as many young people as I can to get them into fitness and give them beginner tips.
Yeah, that's a good question. So actually, it all started probably with what a fitness journey because like I used to be more of an athlete, right? So like I used to like be a sprinter. That's how I really got into the gym, like sports and all that. But then once like I started taking track a little bit more seriously, then injury was just like reoccurring over and over again, right? So I needed to find a new outlet to like put my energy towards into. And then one thing that I realized is like through my journey as as an athlete, I was getting assistance, right, from other coaches and whatsoever. But then the other thing that I also realized was that not everyone can afford that, right? Some people are blessed enough to have the parents aside to support them and whatsoever, and they also have extra funds to be able to invest into themselves, chase that little dream that they want to, or whatever the sports dreams is. But then I realized that not everyone was so gifted with that. So I wanted to figure out a way for me to be able to connect with other people that can relate with that as well, because I was also there at some point, right? That's where I started. I couldn't afford training. I couldn't afford personal trainers. So my talent was what was able to give me access to those type of people, the top coaches in the country, all that. But not everyone is blessed like that. So I was like, okay, what else can I do now that I'm injured? I can't run, I can't do anything. What else can I do? This was around like probably like 2020, before COVID like kicked in. So then I tapped into like the home workout first, just like, you know, playing around with it because I was recovering from my injury. It was a hamstring pull. So I was just recovering from my injury. So playing around with some weights at home, dumbbells, and I started to like it. I started to enjoy it, right? So then that's when like I tapped into the gym. I got a gym membership of my own, and I was like, okay, let's see, like let's try to take this thing a little bit more seriously. And then COVID happened, right? So that took like that kind of like just took my motivation from up here to down here, and I was like, man, I was doing so good, right? I was doing so good because my goal was to try to pick up knowledge first, right? Because once you have the knowledge, then it's easier for you to go ahead and teach others and whatsoever, right? So I was like, okay, what else can I do from here? From there, I went on to like started like watching more YouTube. So like Jeff Nipper, the actual OG influencers and all that stuff. Yeah, watching more YouTube, and then I started producing more home workouts. And then that's when I started gaining traction. So then I realized, okay, maybe I can make something out of this if I take it really, really seriously. And the goal that I had in mind of trying to assist those people that will relate with me, because at the starting part of my journey, I didn't have the money, I didn't have the cash, right? So how exactly can I help others to surpass that roadblock that they're able to not like surpass because, okay, I want to do this thing, but I can afford to do it. So how can I help them surpass that roadblock? That's where the idea of like the whole social media thing came into place. I was like, okay, let's create some social media accounts. Let's take this thing seriously and see where it will go, right? And then from there, we just started growing like crazy. And now here we are today.
So what's the most important fitness advice that you've learned that like most people completely overlook?
You have to be consistently learning. You have to be consistently learning because what you learn today might be something that by the time tomorrow you retry it again, your muscle or your joints will just be like, bro, what in the world are you doing, man? Like, you know what I mean? So as an example, I was doing like a seated row, right? And I saw like Jeff Niver doing it like in a certain way where he was really overstretching that lat. And I was like, okay, that actually looks like it feels good. So let me give it a try. And then I did. But the next thing I know, I popped my shoulder out of place. Right. I was like, okay, maybe more like this doesn't work with my anatomy, right? My body doesn't really accept that. So then I had to go and figure out a different approach of like creating the exact same motion, the exact same movement, but in a different way where it won't affect me, right? So it will work for my anatomy and not against me. So that was one thing that I was realized that, okay, I need to start actually like readjusting everything that I'm learning and not just stick to one thing, because it will work for a certain point, but then as I progress, it's not going to work anymore, right? So you have to be consistently learning.
So from there, what advice would you give to young people?
Ooh. uh,
How old are
these
you,
are
by
good
the way?
questions. If I was going, let's say, if I was going to give an advice to the young me, it
Well,
would
because how
definitely
old are
be.
you? How old are you?
I am actually 25.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're still a relatively young guy.
I'm getting old, man. Those
We
numbers
all
are
are.
going up a little.
We all
What was
are.
that?
I said we
Yeah,
all
we
are. We're
all
all
are.
good.
Yeah, no, that's true. That is true. But like, if I was gonna give an advice to the young me, it would be mostly just to trust your gut, trust your gut, trust your instincts. That's the biggest thing. Trust your instincts, and then chase the impossible. Because like the higher the goal, right, the more impossible that goal seems to be, right? Even if you don't reach that goal, at least like when you start at the bottom, you're kind of like up here, right? Let's say, for example, it's my first day in the gym, right? I'm a completely beginner, my first day, and I want to look like Jeff Nipper. Right? I'm just gonna keep using him because I've been talking about him already. But I want to look like Jeff Nipper one day. That's almost like a mission impossible if I'm a beginner, right? But like as I keep like chasing that goal, even though I never look like Jeff Nipper, 4 years down the line, when I look back, I'm going to see a different individual compared to the individual that I'm going to be within that 4 years in progress, right? So you want to chase the impossible because the impossible will get you closer to your best version of yourself. That's one thing that I really, really realized because I was really scared, right? Most of us tend to be scared to chase that impossible goal that we have in mind. We all have that one goal that is like, if you tell your friend will just look at you like you got three heads, right? So you want to chase the impossible.
If you shoot for the stars, you'll reach the moon. And if you
Exactly.
shoot for the moon, you'll reach the sky.
Exactly. That's a
So
perfect way to put it.
thank you. So from there, you know, you're in a very unique industry where, you get to, because fitness in general is very unique,
Yeah.
in a multitude of ways of helping yourself. But when it comes to, young people and young men, especially, right? Like, what do you see as like a common problem amongst like young men and like young people in general, if there is one?
Yeah. With the fitness, in the fitness side, what I find is like a lot of people, I don't know if you want to be how specific you want me to be with this question, but what I usually find is like a lot of people try to blend in, they try to fit in. That was like the biggest thing. Even as an influencer right now, as where I am today, I try to separate myself from others, right? Because I've met a lot of influencers, but I've met a lot of other people that are doing the same thing. Everyone tries to blend in. It's almost like high school all over again, where like you're a new kid on the block and you're trying to find a group of friends to fit in. So then you start like acting a certain way that you don't usually act just to fit in with that group. So that's one thing that I've really, really realized. Even content wise, like if you're just trying to create content, a lot of people would just like, you're not going to show your unique self, that one thing that makes you you. Let's say if you have a goofy personality, right, that is your personality, but instead of you showing off that personality, you're hiding it and you try to be a little bit more nerdy and like, try to sound like you know it all kind of in a way, but you're hiding your true self at the end of the day and you're pretending in front of the camera. That's what I've realized like most influencers tend to do. And then it sets that unrealistic expectation, as well as when you see social media, you're scrolling on Instagram, you're just like, damn, damn, damn. Like, it just seems like it's all unreal, right? And then like in reality, the life that they're living, the life that they're showing you, or like the things that they're showing you, it's also unrealistic because it's not the true them, right? It's not their true life in a way. That's what I'm trying to say. So like, yeah, I tend to find like a lot of people try to blend in, instead of them try to just be their own person, right? That's one of the biggest thing.
So with that, also random question, but where are you from originally?
I'm from Congo, actually. I'm from
Okay.
Africa. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I could tell by the accent, I'm like,
Yeah.
where's you from? Like it's slight. It's slight. Like you're not, you know, like I can hear what you're saying, but I was like,
Yeah.
he's definitely not from the United States.
Nah.
That's cool.
Nah, see, everyone, a lot of people tend to think that that's where I'm from. I don't know why, but no, I'm not. I'm from Africa. I
Well,
also
it's
live in
very
Canada,
slight.
actually.
It's very slight. So it's not like, so heavy, like it's so obvious, but
Yeah.
like I could tell as you were talking. But
No,
going
that's
from
okay.
yeah, so going from there now, like, you're seeing people kind of grow and message you some really interesting things because you're an influencer. So you're on the receiving end of a lot of really interesting messages and
Yeah.
possibly thank you messages, I'm guessing. Right. So like what are some of the messages that have stuck with you that people have sent to you, like DMs or whatever that people have sent to you that you're like, or emails or clients or whatever, that from doing this, you're like, oh, this really sticks with me. Random person messages you, you know,
Yeah.
for whatever reason. It could have been a big influencer, anything. Just what has stuck with you from either a fan or otherwise from doing this?
I think the first message, actually, I still remember until today, the first message I've ever gotten from one of the fans, if you want to call them that, was him just literally just thanking me for him being able to see what I'm doing, and him also like that inspired him to go and chase the exact same thing, right? So, like I was saying beforehand, I come from a really like humble background, right? So I come from like rock bottom in a way, yeah. Because I tend to always like try to highlight that as well. Because I'm like, a lot of people tend to see where you are now, and then they don't get to see where you were before you got there, right? Because that's what social media does. It shows you the end results, not really like the progress towards our results, right? So then, yeah. So like this message like stuck with me until today, man. He was just like he was really really grateful for me being able to inspire him to chase his goal. And that for me, that was the one message that I needed for me to understand that, okay, the work that I'm doing is actually making a difference. Because I don't want to just create content for the sake of creating the content, right? I want to be able to also inspire others, right? For them to be able to see what I'm doing and be like, okay, I can also do that, right? That's always been like my biggest motivation. And once I got that one message, that's been like my drive until today, because I wanted to quit, right? Because social media is almost like a game impossible kind of thing, right? So I was really like, back then, that was probably around like when I had 400 followers. That was when like I was just starting off, right? So I was just like, man, there's no way I'm gonna get up there. And then I got that one message. It inspired me until today, man. That's one thing that just keeps me going.
You never know where a message is going to land.
That is true.
You never know the impact you're going to have on a person's day, life, week, month, so on and so forth. And
Yeah.
it's really crazy to watch sometimes have that happen. Because you'll
Mhm.
never know if what you said will impact somebody else if they tell you. So it's really cool that you got to. Well, it's cool on your end that you got to see some feedback, but it's really cool that this guy messaged you all from the beginning, and he's like, I was there since day one.
Yeah.
But going from that now, what? How do you respond to hate? How do you respond to criticism?
Ah. uh, Usually, like for my right now, beforehand, it was a little bit challenging because like I was taking everything to heart, right? So obviously you always have like those people that all they do is just like throw those hate comments like down there just to get you going. So at first, when I first started, it was really hard for me to separate the emotion with that comment, right? So I'm like, I don't even know this person, but beforehand, when I'll read the comment, obviously it will affect me to a certain degree. But now I've been able to readjust, right? So like when I see a certain comment, I just laugh at it. I'm like, okay, bro, like I make a joke out of it instead of me like responding with a negative like sense, so that way that keeps them going, right? But the best thing now is that because I have such a huge following now, my fans also defend me. So like whenever they see like a certain comment that is like so negative, they're just I don't even need to respond. They'll take care of it for me, right? So that was like one thing that I needed to understand, was just like what I create and how people respond to it is not really like directly towards me. It's just what they're experiencing, right? So if you were having a bad day and then you see my content, obviously you'll be like, okay, bro, this guy think he's the thing. Like, let me send him a little something on the comment just to see what's going on, right? So that is something that is going on in your life that has nothing to do with me, but I didn't understand that, right? So I was just thinking like whatever people are saying, that's how they saw me. That's what like they're interpreting me as. But it's just like really based on like that person individually and nothing to do with me. That's one thing I needed to learn, but it took me years to be able to understand that.
So, going from there, even, is there any, how do you, on a day, okay, I'm going to actually go from here. I'm going to change the subject entirely. So, on a
Yeah.
given day, what does
Yeah.
your ideally productive day look like to you? Like you
Ooh.
wake up, you get out of bed. I assume, I don't know, maybe you check your phone first, but
Yeah.
I assume you have to get out of your bed at some point. So you get
Yeah.
out of bed, or maybe you check your phone first, whatever. But what, from waking up, from being conscious, and all the way until you have to go back to bed again, what is an ideally productive day to you?
To me, so my day starts early, but it also depends what time I go to bed, because with what I do, time zone difference and all that. But usually like I try to aim for 7 a.m. So at 7 a.m. once I wake up, the first thing I do is take care of the comments. So I know most people will tell you don't look at technology, all that stuff, but this is how I connect with the audience as well. So I want to make sure that like the post that I made the day before, I'm able to answer within 24 hours. So that creates a communication between whoever is making the comments, and I'm not just completely ignoring the comments, because I want to make sure that you're learning, right? That's always my goal with all my platforms and whatsoever. So I take care of the comments first. So once that's taken care of, and I'm currently actually still in school. So once I take care of the comments, then right away we start classes. So start classes will take me until noon, so around 12. So between there, of course, I'll have like my breakfast and all that stuff as well, because we're trying to grow. It's winter, right? So we're trying to grow. So yeah, so around 12, then we tap into the business side, so the social media stuff. So if I have any client check-ins, that's when like I'll basically do that. If I have any new clients that I need to onboard, that's when I'll basically take care of that until like 3 p.m. So once 3 p.m. hit, it's either I'm going to be at the gym, or if I have anything else any projects that I'm currently working on, then I'll basically focus on that first and then go hit the gym, because the gym just basically helps me refocus. It boosts up my dopamine, all that stuff. I feel energetic. I usually lift heavy, so that gives me like that confidence of like, okay, I'm feeling good now. So what's the next task to tackle, right? So after the gym, obviously we eat, all that stuff as well. Then I have other projects that I'm also currently working on. So I'm working on an app. So I will basically working on the business side again. So the boring stuff. And after that, it was just going to be like a little chill evening, watch some YouTube, Greg Doucette, a little bit of entertainment kind of thing. And then that's it. So then the next day is just a repeat. So it's kind of like my day, I usually break it into 4 brackets. So I have the AM bracket, which is the 7 a.m. until noon. And then I have the second bracket, which is like 12 until 3. And then the third bracket, which is going to be from 3:30 to 6. And then the fourth bracket is basically from 6:30 to 9:30. So then by 10 or around 10:30, that's when like I make my last post, and I'm just basically getting ready to log off on everything. So that way, I just go and chill. And then the next day is just a repeat.
So let's talk now about your diet. Let's talk about your diet. So what are you eating in a day? Right. I don't know if you eat the same thing every day. Some
No.
people change it up. Some people do the cheat
Yeah.
meals. But what is like your weekly eating schedule, broken down by days?
Yeah. So usually I eat the same breakfast. So the breakfast, I keep it the same because it's just really quick. So for breakfast, I have oats. And then with there, we include some fats. We also include some protein. So like protein shakes, some peanut butter, chia seeds, some fruits in there, probably bananas or something like that in there as well. And then we have a little bit of what do you call them? I'm trying to think of the proper name for them. If I remember, I'll just like bring it up. And then after that, I also add in 3 eggs. So either it could be boiled, or it could be, if I don't boil it, then I'll just put it on the pan. And if I put on the pan, then I'll add some egg whites as well in there. So then that's just more protein and whatsoever. Breakfast is usually pretty big. And then with that, I'll also add in a smoothie. So that way, like, I'm drinking my calories as well, because I'm trying to bulk, right? That's the goal for this winter. So once I do that, then like for lunch, it's gonna be literally a treat. So it could be anything. It could be, usually I tend to eat a lot of African food, especially right now, because it contains a lot of calories. So like one meal could have like 1,200 calories in just one meal, right? So that helps me throughout the day to just like, don't have to worry for the rest of like my calories and whatsoever. And then that would be around 12. And then afterwards, before the gym, I'm gonna have a little of a smaller portion of a meal. So that could probably be like a little bit more of a rice, or maybe pasta, something that I made at home. If not, then I would just like order some poutine or something like that. So my meals are usually flexible. What I really try to go for is to make sure that like I'm staying within the macro counts, right? So like my calorie requirements and whatsoever. That's really like my main focus. It's almost like it's a numbers game, right? It's almost like a game for me to just make sure that like I'm hitting those numbers. So yeah, so once we have the meal before the gym, then after the gym, we have another meal as well. So basically, fill up the muscles and all that. And then before bed, probably like 2 hours or so, I'll have a little snack as well. So, because once you go to bed, you're burning a lot of calories as well while you're sleeping, right? So try to support that system. And then the next day is the exact same schedule again. So usually my meals that I usually swipe out is either lunch or the meal before the workout. Those are usually like my flexible meals, so I can eat whatever I want. So if I wanted to go to Dairy Queen, get some burgers or something, Chick-fil-A, then I do that. You have to allow for the flexibility with your meals or your diet.
So what do you think about carbs? This is a big question because everybody seems to talk about carbs and sugar. And I know you're smiling because it's a big issue. Carbs and sugar are always the devil, but I don't know why.
Yeah.
So,
Actually,
go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, no, I had nothing else to add. I was just going to say, like, carbs are just always seen as the devil. So is sugar. Sugar, I understand more.
Yeah.
But carbs are like a category of sugars.
Mm-hmm.
But what's so bad about both of them?
Yeah. So the fact that you brought that up is actually funny because I'm working. So usually with the way I program, this will answer the question as well. Usually the way I set my programs, like any programs that I will release or like diet wise or training wise, I put myself through the process first. So I basically I just put the test, like I'm kind of like a lab rat, right? Before like it goes out to like everyone else. So right now what I'm working on is a diet where like it's a really high carbs base and then low protein base. So I've been able to gain weight like really, really quickly. Carbs, honestly, I don't think it's a bad thing. Yes, the health industry will like highlight how like it's terrible for you, all that stuff. It really just comes down to like your ability to control, right? How much are you really eating? Because at the end of the day, with your nutrition, right, when it comes to diet, it's honestly just a numbers game, right? So let's say if you weigh 100 pounds and then for you to maintain 100 pounds, all you need is 100 calories. 1,000 calories. This is just an example. For you to maintain that 100 pounds, all you need is 1,000 calories, right? And let's say all you're consuming is literally mainly carbs, right? As long as you're eating just 1,000 calories each day, you're not going to gain weight. I actually put a client through a diet using McDonald's because he didn't believe that like this process was actually true, because it's just a numbers game, right? So the whole entire time we were training for 3 months, all he ate was just McDonald's. That was like his whole like diet plan, right? McDonald's. So going back to my example of a 100-pound guy, if he started eating way more than that 1,000 calories that he required to maintain the 100 pounds, he will be on a surplus. So that's where the negative side of the carbs comes in. You start gaining weight. But if you don't realize that and make adjustment to bring you back down to that 1,000 again, over time, within 4 weeks, obviously you're going to be overweight, right? But if you keep playing the numbers game, let's say one day you eat like 1,000 calories, and then the next day you ate like 1,200 calories, and then the next day you can just eat 800 calories, because then it's just making up, right? You're just making up the numbers, you're making up for it each day. That's kind of how I see it. When it comes to that's why like I brought up how like you have to be consistently learning, right? You have to be able to learn and adjust things, so that way it works better for you, and create the flexibility for you to be able to maintain that diet. That's really the key. The key isn't for you to just like to be eating greens all day, like broccoli, chicken, and rice. Like that's not the goal. That's not. Yes, it looks healthy, but a healthy diet is a diet that you're able to control and maintain. That's what I really see as healthy. But then, yes, you have to be able to control it, the carbs and all that stuff. There's different sources of carbs, of course, but most people tend to look at like the sugar side and then like pour in the negatives, right? Pour in the negatives on carbs. But carbs is what really helps you expand, especially if you're trying to gain weight, right? That's your friend. That's your biggest friend for you to be able to gain weight just like that. So yeah, if you're able to control it, play around with the numbers, I think that's totally okay, right? From my opinion.
So, when you're saying that now we have the big question is sugar specifically. What is so bad about sugar, right? I have an idea, like I kind of know, but nobody really has a good explanation. It's terrible for you, but I have no idea why. Like, I do have an idea, but I don't have that good of an idea. So tell me, why is sugar the devil?
Yeah. So if it's natural, if it's from a natural resource, from fruits, right, something like that, that's totally fine. But then when it's processed, that's where the issue is, right? It also comes down as well, like even if we weren't looking at cakes, if we were looking at pasta, the pasta is really, really like that's processed, right? It's not actually like, yes, you can spend a little bit extra and get the pasta that's made from rice and all that stuff. But as once the food gets processed, it's basically sort of unhealthy. It doesn't really react quite positively with your body over time, because then it will just affect you, which then leads to sickness and all that stuff, right? But if you're able to actually get your sugar from natural resources, you will be okay. And your body actually needs that, because that's what gives you the energy. As soon as you consume cake, let's say if you didn't eat anything the whole day, and then you you decide to go to what's a place that most people know, that donut place, I forgot what it's called, but
Krispy
anyways,
Kreme.
What was it?
Krispy Kreme, Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin' Donuts, yes. So if you go, let's say you didn't eat all day, and then you decided to go, you got off work, and then you go to Dunkin' Donuts and got like a 12-pack of donuts, right? As soon as you eat that, even once you eat one, you will feel a lot more energized. It just pumps that energy into you like crazy, right? Because our body needs it. At the end of the day, we still need a source of sugar. But then when you go to like a certain extent where like it's overdone, like you're overdoing it, then it becomes unhealthy, because all of it is already processed, right? It's not meant for our body. We're not meant to consume it. Donuts is not really good for you, but it makes the company money. That's why it's getting sold, right? Even as an example, the fact that like that saying where like breakfast is the most important meal of the day, that's a lie. It's not. It was just all processed like through a marketing scheme, right? We don't know. Most people don't know that, right? And then it becomes like a thing that we're preaching to others. Exact same thing with like cakes and carbs and all that stuff, right? It is really not good for us. Our body is not meant to really consume things like that, because it's extremely processed. But again, it just comes down to being able to control it, right? That's literally it. Anything can be really good for you, and then when you overdo it, it can become like your worst enemy, right?
Right. So now the follow-up to that, I would say, is what's the ideal? I'm going to try and word this carefully, because I'm going to make sure it's like more specific. Because if I were to say what's the
Yeah.
ideal diet, then it's like for who, for what?
Yeah.
So when it comes to energy, right? A lot of people throughout the day feel really tired, and my interest is why, right? Like when you're talking about energy with sugar, why do so many people every day? I have a few ideas, mainly a lack of sleep and a caffeine addiction that everybody has,
Yeah.
uh, which then leads to withdrawals, and then you're whatever.
Yeah.
So other than that, why is everybody so tired throughout the day? And what's a good quick way to get energy that's not caffeine?
Mm. So I found like a lot of people tend to be fatigued throughout the day based on your diet plays a really, really big role on how you feel throughout your day, right? Your diet plays a really, really tremendous big role. So if you were someone that is consistently consuming junk food all the time, over and over again, right? To a certain degree, obviously the next day you're gonna crash. That's basically what happens. I think the easiest way for me to explain this is let's bring liquor into this a little bit. So if you're someone that drink, right? If you're someone that drink often, you go out, right? You're having fun that night. You're feeling good, like everything is feeling amazing. But then the next day, once you wake up, you're gonna have that headache. You're gonna feel sick. You're gonna want to maybe like you overdid it and you're gonna throwing up everywhere, all that stuff, right? And then once you step outside, the bright light hit you. You're just like, man, I don't even want to like do this, right? It's the exact same thing with the food as well, right? If you're following a terrible diet, your body is just like, okay, you're eating this and I'm burning it right away. That's how processed food work. It doesn't like your body doesn't take time to digest it. So that way, like you're actually like evenly spreading out the energy throughout the day, right? So if I'm eating McDonald's now, my body is going to burn that right away really, really quickly within literally like 10, 15 minutes, depending on the amount, obviously. Like it's gonna burn it really, really quickly. And within an hour, I'm gonna be hungry again, right? That's why, like, if you're eating junk, you get hungry really easily, right? So then compared to if you're eating rice as your source of carb, as an example, as your source of carb instead, it would take a longer period for your body to be able to digest that. And that also means that you're equally distributing the energy throughout as you progress throughout your day and whatsoever. You're not burning out all the energy right away, right? Because your body is taking time to digest everything, right? So then as you're progressing throughout your day, as most of us tend to have a lot of like a busy day, right? So if you're just consuming like processed food, you're burning through it right away, right? It's almost like you're emptying out the gas tank every time really, really quickly. So then of course your body will just be like, okay, man, you're overexhausting me. I'm here at work with you, but then like you're also not feeding me well enough for me to be able to support you throughout all the tasks that you're doing throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, by the time 5 p.m. hits, you're crashing, you're tired, right? You don't want to do anything, which is why most people tend to find it hard to be able to go to the gym or do other activities after work because your body is already done, right? But you need to take care of your body. That's the number one thing that most people tend to make the mistake of, where that you're so focused on chasing a specific goal at work or whatever it could be, but then you forget about the body. You forget about what exactly you're putting in your body, because certain food, it tastes good, but then it doesn't give you all the benefits that you really, really actually need, right? You're already, how do I put this? You're already lacking on the nutrient side, right? So you don't have all the nutrients that you actually need. The majority of us don't consume enough nutrients that our body actually need, vitamins and all that stuff, minerals and all that stuff that we actually need, right? To consistently be able to make use of our body to give us the results that we've been able to produce as you start your early in the morning. When you start early in the morning, like you're feeling good, you have a lot more energy, right? Yes, it will take you a little bit of time to be all waking up and all that stuff. And then as the day progresses, right, if you're not eating the right thing, your energy is just going to be tanking down because you're emptying out the gas, right? The gas tank is just like getting empty, getting empty, getting empty, which is why a lot of people tend to rely on coffee. And then once you rely on that, then that becomes addictive. And then you're just like consuming that to boost your energy back up. It's either you're consuming coffee or you're consuming like unhealthy carbs to boost that energy back up, right? Which then creates that whole entire cycle of I'm hungover. I'm going to go back to alcohol again. I'm hungover. I'm going to just drink more, right? To feel better. But then the next time, I'm going to feel the exact same feeling that I felt in the past, and I'm going to drink more. It's the exact same repetition with the food as well. It's like bro, I'm crashing at the end of the day, but the next day I'm not adjusting anything to fix it. I'm gonna redo the exact same thing. And then you're just like in a full cycle, relying on different things that is not really helping you in the long run, right? That's what like I tend to realize with a lot of my new clients. They don't realize like this is something that they're doing until someone else points it out to them to let them know, okay, bro, like you can do this, you can be killing it throughout the day, right? You can be literally like the best worker at your job or whatsoever, fully energetic. I don't know if you I don't know what you do for work, but like certain when you're working like in a certain company, there's always like that one couple people that they always have energy. Like they always have energy. Like it's super annoying. All right. It's super annoying, but they always have energy. But in those type of people, if you ask them what exactly they're consuming, they have a flexible diet, right? They understand where like if I'm going to work today, I need to make sure that like the source of carb that I'm consuming is going to take time for my body to digest it. And then at lunch break, I'm going to consume a type of carb that's going to also take time for my body to also digest it. Because carbs is what is the gas for your body, right? It's what like really, really gets you going throughout the day. And then it also powers your brain because carbs also maintain water in it and all that stuff, right? So it also powers your brain. So without it, without water, right? If you're not also like recharging yourself, rehydrating, you don't use electrolytes, which most people don't, which your body needs sodium and all that stuff, right? So you're already lacking throughout the day, but then you're consuming things that's not helping you, which just makes the situation worse. So that's where like a lot of people tend to just crash out. So to readjust that, honestly, all you need is to just like figure out a source of carbs that you enjoy. It could be potatoes, sweet potatoes, anything like that. If you make that for lunch, for your work day or whatsoever, that will help you go throughout your day in a better mood. You're gonna feel full. You're gonna feel more excited, right? Because when you're hungry, bro, when you're feeling when you're feeling terrible, you get how do you put it? Hangry? Is that how to say? Yeah, you get hangry, right? Even if you're at work, you're like, man, leave me alone. I don't even want to chat with you right now, right? Or you could be talking to a customer and then you're reacting in a different way just because your stomach is empty or you're not feeling good based on what you consumed previously, right? So that's how like I usually tend to explain it to my clients. It's just like the exact same process as you drinking alcohol. If you've ever done that, then you will understand what I'm trying to say, because like you're gonna feel good, but then afterwards, once it wears off, you're crashing back down, right? And then you're just repeating the cycle.
So from there, when we're talking about a lot of unhealthy habits that people tend to have, what's like the biggest one that what's like one habit that you hear about and you're like, ah, this again? You're like, which I'm sure there is one.
Yeah. The biggest one, oof, the biggest one is always like the eating side, right? The eating side is always like the biggest unhealthy habit. But how do I? It's a really, really good question, man. How do I word this? Because the biggest one tend to be always like what people are consuming. That's always like the biggest thing, because one thing will lead you to another thing, right? So let's say today was my day off and I was bored, right? I was at home and I was just bored, right? I would just be like, okay, I need something to keep me busy. What else is going to keep me busy? If nothing comes to mind, let me go open the fridge. I know you probably had this moment where like you're just at home and you're not even hungry. You just go open the fridge just for the sake of looking at what's in the fridge, right? Or sometimes you know that fridge is completely empty. There's no food in it, but you're gonna just go ahead and open that fridge and just be like, okay, let's see what's in here. So it's almost like what people really consume, to me, that's my strongest belief. What people consume is what leads them to like the next negative behavior, right? A bad habit, for say, right? So if you were bored, you're at home, you open the fridge and you see something that you like, and you see like a cake, for example, a piece of cake in there, and then you consume that. And then you're like, okay, like that's gone, right? It will take you like 3 minutes, a couple minutes, and it's gone, right? And then you get bored again. It's like, what else am I gonna do now? So then you go look for another negative thing to do again, right? Because like once you do one negative once you take a negative action, it's gonna just lead to another negative action as well at the end of the day, right? Because it's just a multiple of like thing that is kind of like shifting you to one thing and then it's shifting you to another step. So for me, it's just like mostly always like what people tend to consume is one of the biggest thing, and also who you surround yourself with as well is also one of the biggest thing as well that will affect you at the end of the day. So what's that saying? Like the five closest friends that you surround yourself with, you're most likely going to be something like them. So those are the two things. For me, it's like what you consume really affects you because it affects your mind as well, right? And then the people that you're always around with, they have a big impact on you. For example, for me, I just relocated here to where I live now. I left, it's called where I was beforehand. It's called Newfoundland. It's a different province. So I was there, and things were. That's when I was growing, right? I was growing my social media. Things were going well, but the environment that I was in was not really quite positive. So I needed to make an adjustment with that in order for me to fully like grow because I knew like I could do better, right? But then like if I didn't make that change, I don't think like me and you would even be having this conversation that we're currently having here. So that's where like I find like the people, your environment, the people that you surround yourself with and what you consume has the biggest impact on you without you even realizing it.
What would you say to the person who knows that they should go to the gym but can't ever seem to get themselves to do so? They always procrastinate. They always say to themselves, "I'm gonna get to it at some point," or they don't want to go, or whatever reason they may have, or reason.
Yeah.
So, what would you say to that person?
So what I will say is if you don't go, time will go by. If you go, time will go by, right? So if you decide to not show up for a year, time will still go by, right? We'll still hate 2025 without you showing up at the gym. Or you could either still show up. You don't have to be there for long, right? What I tend to do is I try to, especially if you're really new to the gym, I tend to just tell them to show up for 5 minutes. Show up for 5 minutes. You don't need to work out. Honestly, just go walk into the gym, sit on the massage chair, just be in that environment, right? Be in the gym. That's literally it. That's how I get like people that don't usually go to go. You just show up, do that every day for a couple days, right? And then it just becomes an automatic behavior, right? So if you don't show up, time will still go by. And then time is your time is something like once you lose it, it doesn't come back. So right. So if we talk about your age, like if I was speaking to a specific client, let's say he's in his 20s, right? If we talk about his age, we're like, okay, you were 19 like a year ago, right? Time still went by. I know like you had goals and things that you had in mind that you wanted to do that you probably didn't tackle, but time still went by. So no one is waiting for you. Time is not waiting for you, right? So what is it exactly that you're waiting for, right? So if we were going to look at how things are right now for you, do you think is how you want it to be forever, right? So if you are overweight, as an example, right? If you're overweight, as an example, and you're having a hard time going up the stairs, right? Is you're breathing heavy just to go up like 5 stairs. And then I will just basically ask you, so, okay, if you realize that like you find it really difficult to just go up 5 stairs, right? In a year time, where do you think you're going to be, right? If right now this is where like the stage that you're in a year time, if you don't take action, not even like one small step, where else do you think you're going to be in a year time? Nowhere else. You're going to be in the same spot, but it's going to be worse, right? But if you take a little action by simply just showing up at the gym for 5 minutes, let's start by 5 minutes, 2 weeks straight, pick a specific time. It could be 2 p.m. every single day for 5 days a week. Show up at the gym every single day, 2 p.m. You show up 5 minutes and then you leave. Show up 5 minutes and then you leave. That just create that behavior of like you just showing up first, because that's what like a lot of people tend to have the difficulty of being able to do, to show up first. And then once you do that, then let's talk about bringing up that time a little bit more. Let's talk about like getting you to do something active. So the example that I was using of someone that's overweight. So from that 5 minutes, how can we get you on the treadmill for just 10 minutes? So once you complete the 5 minutes for 2 weeks of just showing up simply, on the third week, we're gonna, okay, let's bring up that time a little bit more. How about you spend 10 minutes in the gym Obviously, if you're just going to sit there and do nothing, you're going to get bored. So you're going to want to do something, at least something that's not going to require too much energy. So let's jump on the treadmill. Let's get you to just walk 10 minutes, right? Do that for a few days. Once you're able to do that consistently, then we bring up that time again. So they're just like small adjustments. A lot of people tend to try to make a big jump where like, I've never been to the gym before. All of a sudden you have a workout program. All of a sudden you have like a specific training split that you're following. All of a sudden you have a specific diet. It's all too much all at once, right? So when you're learning something new, because it is going to be something new that you're learning, you want to take small steps. So that way you maintain that progress and then you're just going up, right? That's how it works in the gym. Even if you're an advanced lifter or whatsoever, as you're progressing, what we call it is a progressive overload with the weight, right? As you're progressing, you can't just bench 45 one day and then the next day try to put 3 plates on and start going, right? It doesn't work that way. You have to add on like maybe 2 pounds here, 5 pounds here until you get to that 3 plates. This is the exact same process, right? You showing up for 5 minutes, we bring it up to 10, and then we bring it up to like 20. Then before you know it, you're already on the treadmill for 20 minutes for 5 days. That's already enough calories to put you in a deficit, and then you'll be seeing results. So once you start seeing results in the mirror, that's even a bigger motivation to keep you going, right? So you have to take small steps. Don't leak over, because then that's when like, once you do that, you'll show up for a week and then you're done. That's how like a lot of people tend to quit, right? It just feels overwhelming. It feels too much because it's something completely new to you where you didn't easily progress into it. You just wanted to be aggressive right away, right? But that usually always backfires. So slow progression is the best way to go.
So now, this is a funny question. So a lot of people join the gym because they want chicks. So a lot of people a lot of people start working out because they want to look good, because they want girls. All right, because the stereotype is that girls want muscles, which there's a lot of truth to.
Yeah.
Now, I'm actually the question is now, is there truth and reality in that from your experience, number one? And number two, as a result of that, do you think that's a valid reason to start going to the gym?
No. There's no truth behind that. Honestly, there's no truth behind that, because I started doing some street interviews as well, actually, because my audience asked for it, right? They wanted to like figure out, how can I get a girlfriend? So that was a question where I was like, I'm not a girl. So how about we go interview girls and try to figure out what exactly is it that they're looking for in guys, right? And not to lie to you, dad bods is what most girls goes for. Dad bods, because at the end of the day, when you look at it, like a really, really attractive girl doesn't want to compete with your look as well. If she's like completely like confident in herself, then she won't care. But in the society that we live in today, the majority of the girls that you see that are like 10 out of 10 or whatever you want to call them, they're really insecure. So like they don't have that self-confidence in their own self, even though they look unbelievable, like, you know, good looking and all that stuff. They're really, really insecure. That was one thing that I learned. And it was a game changer. So if you're going to go to the gym, you want to do it for you, right? Because if you have an outside motivation, it's only going to last for so long. You want that motivation to be internal. It has to be coming from you. It has to be deep down. So if I'm just chasing something for me to be able to please someone else, it's not going to last for long. Yes, it might probably last me for like six months or something like that, or maybe a year. But then at some point, if I'm not able to get that girl, I'm going to start losing that motivation, right? So it's not going to really take you that far, right? It will only take you like a small bit up there, but like it's not going to take you that far. And at the end of the day, you will be disappointed once you get to that physique and you're trying to hit up girls and they're like, no, you got too much muscle. Like, you know, that's just too much for me. You might have to like, you need to gain a little bit more weight. Like, you know, it's just too much. So, and then the other thing that I also found was that a lot of girls tend to think that the guys that like really take the gym seriously, apparently they tend to be in themselves a lot too much, right? So they feel like intimidated a little bit by your physique and by your ability to be disciplined and all that stuff, right? Because if you have a good physique, it says a lot about you. You have to put in the work. You have to be consistent. You have to show up every day. So it says a lot about your character, right? But a lot of girls tend to be scared about that because, of course, the insecurity and all that stuff. So if you look at, if we, yeah, let's stop talking about the boys for a second. If we look at the girls that are like really, really hella good looking, right? In your high school, for example, right? Let's take it a little bit younger. Yeah. When you were in high school, right? The girls that were like extremely, extremely good looking, they tend to have friends that are less good looking as them. You definitely realize this. Like they don't have friends that are less good looking as them, right? Because it makes them feel or seem superior to their friend group or whatsoever. It's the exact same thing in adulthood, bro. It's the exact same thing. Nothing changed. So if you're like way better looking than your girl, like you're in shape, like she doesn't really work out herself, like, you know, you're looking good, you have a crazy physique, you're lean, abs are chiseled out, like, you know, you're looking hella good. That intimidates her instead of like motivating her. For most girls, that was what I was able to learn. So like working out for a girl, that will only take you so far, right? Unless if it's a gym girl, then that's a completely different story. But also gym girls tend to be a little bit crazy. But but if you're working out for a girl, it is going to be a little bit disappointing at the end of the day. Like I can definitely say that guarantee. It's going to be a little bit disappointing at the end of the day because you're either not going to reach your goal or you're going to reach that goal and get disappointed and realize that like they don't even want that.
So now going from there, there's the meme out there, which I'm sure you've seen all the memes because you're on the internet quite often. But there's one meme in particular where it's like the expectations of what's gonna happen after you're working out, and it's like a guy with like a really chiseled face, and then right next to him is like a bunch of hot girls, and then what actually happens is it's a really buff guy, and then a really like a bunch of other really buff guys.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what happens. That's what I've noticed. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes like you get guys that I know this one guy, and I'm not gonna say his name, but he's an influencer, and oh my gosh, it's insane to me. So I remember I had him on the show. Actually, I mean, like, I guess if you watch all my podcasts and you found like the conversation I'm talking about, you could find him. But basically, this guy, he's super, super shredded, like super duper duper shredded. He's like 6'3". And anyways, so what happened was that when I had him on the show, I said to him, wait, can you hear me? Are we cutting out?
Yeah, I can hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I can hear
I was gonna say that on the show, I asked him like, why'd you respond to my DM? And he said to me, because I messaged him and he responded on his Instagram, which is rare. So then he said to me, he's like, oh, well, I responded to you because you're one of the few messages I get from guys. And I'm like, what do you mean?
What?
And then so then he said to me, he's like, yeah, no, like the majority of messages I get are from like chicks. And I'm like, again, what do you mean? And so then, like, now that I know him, like, better on his Snap story, right? Because I have him added in his Snap story, he always responds to them, but it's always girls just messaging him like, oh, you're so hot, you're so hot, you're so hot, you're so hot. And it's like, they're real girls. They're not, to my knowledge, they're real girls.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, and then there's like other girls. Like sometimes I like look through his Instagram comments and it's just like girls, sometimes with like 20,000 followers, that'll be like messaging, like commenting saying, oh, I want to ride, not the bike, and I'm like, this is insane. Like, and that guy, what's funny is that he has a girlfriend, and I'm like, this is some next level. I don't know. It's just like, it's not something I would do. Like, like I wouldn't, if I was attracted to somebody, I wouldn't comment like that. But like, it's an interesting world to live in though, to have pretty privilege. If that makes sense.
No,
like,
that is true. That is true. That's really true. Because like a lot of like even if you watch the news, right? Like there was this felon that like came out of like prison and then like his mugshot like popped up and went viral just because of how he looked.
Everyone forgot the blue-eyed guy. The blue-eyed guy.
Black and
he had blue eyes. He was black and he had really bright blue eyes. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah,
he became an actor. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So you have like the pretty face privilege in a way. That's what I call it. So you have those people, and then you also have how do you put it? There's also certain like characters that girls really like. So there's certain like if you're portraying a certain form of character on social media, that will attract girls as well. Let's say if you were jacked, right? If you were jacked and you had like a motorcycle, like some sporty motorcycle or something like that.
Which is what that guy has, by the way.
See, that's literally it. Girls love that. They love the
Right.
jack guy in a motorcycle, a sporty motorcycle. Like
Right.
that shows like you're accepting danger, right? That's something that really like attracts girls, right? I don't know what kind of content he creates, but like
Yeah.
if you're portraying like you have like a masculine character in a way, a masculine trait in a way, and then you also are able to also like challenge a little bit more of yourself to like touch that
Right.
danger side of life, right? You're like, bro, I'm gonna live on the edge a little bit and start risking it, right? If you are that type of person and you have that kind of character, girls will love you, bro, because that's what entertains them, right? The more crazy stuff you're able to do, you're gonna be entertaining to them, right? But it also comes down to like what kind of character you're portraying on social media at the end of the day, right? But if you were just like C bump level of like physique, right? You're ridiculously big and you don't have a certain character or you're not portraying in a certain way. It's just your physique basically. You're gonna get in like 90% of your DMs is just dudes be like, damn, bro, you look good. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Which is not a bad thing. I still like
It's not
that.
a bad thing. Yeah, no. It's not a bad thing at all. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing because then you know,
Yeah.
like your physique is actually like, okay, the bros approve, right? So that's when
Right.
like you know, like I'm getting bigger, right? Because like the guys are hyping you up. But then like if you're portraying a certain character or like a certain you're portraying your physique in a certain way, like look at Alex Hubank, for example, right? He
Right.
has the pretty face, and then he's using like that aesthetic Greek god kind of like in a way, right? Like he's posing and all that stuff. It's not just like, oh, just look at my physique, that's it, I'm plain and simple. But it also comes into play like how do you make use of that physique, right? How do you portray that physique? How can someone like really tell a little bit more about you with that physique, right? Because a lot of people that are jacked tend to just be like, the gym is my life and that's it, right? Other than that, like I'm really taking the gym seriously. The majority of the time the gym is really like what I always look up forward to. But if you're able to show that you have something else in your life that actually like, you know, you have hobbies, you have things that are really interesting about you, and you're able to portray that and other people are able to see it, then you're winning, bro. You'll be getting those DMs like that guy.
So, here's a funny, but no, this isn't funny, but this is kind of a sad example I'm going to use. So, okay. So I remember I was at coffee with a friend recently,
Yeah.
and you know, it was at like a local cafe. Anyways, so I was talking with him about pretty privilege, and he said to me that there is. So I told him the story about these girls that I knew, and this one
Yeah.
other girl that I knew. So this
Yeah.
one girl that I was like right next to these two girls, and they both were talking about this one girl that walked in that I did know, and she's like,
Hmm.
this was like a while ago, but like she was like super attractive.
Yeah.
And like I had known her for a while, and she had a boyfriend, but she was like super, super attractive and pretty, but she was also really popular. But these two
Yeah.
girls that were next to me, they weren't saying this in an insulting way. They were like, oh, she definitely has pretty privilege. And I'm like, and I kept listening, and they're like, and they basically said that if she wasn't popular, actually, I think they started off with this, that they're like, if she was not pretty, she wouldn't be popular. And then I
Yeah.
started thinking, I'm like, that probably is true. And they started pointing out, like, yeah, like she's really quiet, like she never talks, like she never really, like she has all the traits of a really unpopular, or not really unpopular, but like you're doing terrible things. I'm talking like
Yeah.
unpopular, sort of personality where you're not
Yeah.
really that outgoing. And I know her, so like I know that's true. Like she's not really that
Hmm.
outgoing.
Hmm.
She can, be kind of like an exciting person, but like not really. Like you have to like talk to her. You have to be the
Right.
one to
No.
say anything. But
Yeah.
the fact that but like other girls knew this, the fact that she was attractive made her very popular, which I think
Yeah.
is a really. And I actually had a guy on just recently. His name was Nick Hooks. And I asked him, like, do you think you have pretty privilege? Because he makes like thirst trap content, actually.
Yeah.
And he said, like, he's like, yeah, I do. And I'm like, so you think people treat you differently because of your looks? And he's like, yes, 100%. And I'm like, the man said it. Like, what more
Yeah.
can I ask for? So,
Yeah.
like,
Literally.
well, with you though, has that like ever like is it like all just dudes in your DMs then? Like, because you're talking from like experience, like I see.
Yeah. Well, mine is like it's a mix of both. It's a mix of both, like both dudes and girls as well. But my DMs, I don't really answer my DMs myself. I usually have like people assist me with that, but it's usually a mix of both. And even if you look at my comment as well, it's like it's usually always like a mix of both as well. So for me, like because of the sort of content that I create, if I was creating thirst traps, then that would be a completely different story, right? So because of the way, like again, it comes down to what exactly you're showing people, what you want to be known as, right? So if I was just if I was creating thirst trap like that guy, if I got a motorcycle, which I could just like change my content completely, showing like a different character completely, that would change up my audience so quick, right? Because on Snapchat, that's what I was starting doing at first on Snapchat, and then my audience size was like 70% girls and then 30% guys. But then as soon as like I changed that and I started like posting more of like just like educational stuff, basic, just like me talking at the gym, just doing like guy stuff, right? The audience size completely switched, right? So it's all based on like what exactly you're showing others, what they can tell about you. Then it will attract like a certain people to come and actually like watch your content and all that stuff, right? So it all comes down to that, man. But yeah, pretty privilege, bro, is a big thing, man. Because I find a lot of not all of them, but a lot of like pretty people tend to have a boring personality, right? They're not really like outgoing. Right. They don't really do much. Yeah. They're just always just chilling, right? They don't really have like anything that like, I don't know how to put it, like hobbies that are really extremely interesting that you'd be like, oh man, that's really cool. Let's go out and do this thing, right? They're really always like, they just rely on like how they look. That's how like they get through with anything.
Well, they don't know that they're even relying on it. That's the interesting part. They don't even know it. Because
they don't even know it.
Because you don't know what
automatic.
You don't know what you don't know. Like you don't know what it's like to be ugly. So therefore, you're just taking everything as a given. Like, oh, what? Yeah. Like you never really have to develop social skills as like a hyper attractive person. I mean, if you have social skills and you're a really attractive person, that's a rare combination. I've met people that are like really attractive that have the personality of potatoes, and then I've also had really ugly. I hate to say this, but like really not attractive people have like some insanely interesting personalities, characteristics, so on and so forth. So, but you were going to tell a story. So go on with the story.
Oh, yeah. So I was actually in New York not too long ago. So I was down there with a few of my friends, and they're really attractive and all that. But then like me and one of my guy friends, we went out, right? We went out one night and we're like, okay, let's go check out like, what is New York like? So we went out and we were lining up in the lines. And what we realized was like the bouncer was just like scouting the line. So he would just like walk down past the line. The line was ridiculously long, man. He would just like walk down past the line, scout the line, look and see who was in the line. And then he would just pick like specific girls that look in a certain way, like the pretty privilege and all that stuff. And just be like, okay, you guys can just go with. So stuff like that is like, they don't even realize like this is what is happening. I'm just being let into like I'm being like I'm receiving certain things because of how I look, right? Unless if like you point it out to them, then like they'll be like, oh, okay, like this is how it works. Then like but then I mean if you're blessed with that gift, why not make use of it, right? I mean I don't blame them, but like you said though, most of them don't tend to have like anything really. I don't know. Like the last time I had a conversation with a really attractive person, like it was at the gym actually. She approached me and we were trying to have a conversation, but it was hard to have a normal conversation, man, because like it was always like a big gap in between, like that awkward silence, and I was just like, I can't even talk to you. Like I can't even have a normal conversation with you. But then some people, you will just meet them. They're normal looking. You can have deep conversation, actual general conversation. They know how to communicate. They know how to like entertain you with the conversation as well. So like when you have that privilege, I think like it's kind of like a disadvantage in a way, but then it gives you access to a lot of things as well, right? So it's kind of like pick your poison.
So here's a funny story. So actually not a funny story, a funny point that I have now that we're talking about this. So I was thinking about comedians, right? Because comedians are some of the smartest people that you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
But think of a really attractive comedian. The only one that comes to my mind is there's only like two major comedians that I could say that are like pretty good looking, if not very. That's like Jim Carrey and Matt Rife. But Jim Carrey doesn't. Jim Carrey doesn't really do stand-up.
Yeah.
But if you think outside of Matt Rife, maybe Andrew Schultz, maybe, he's like average, a little bit above average. He takes care of himself very well.
Mm-hmm.
But think about like a lot of comedians are kind of not good looking, like George
Yeah.
Carlin, Richard Pryor, recent guy, Gabriel Iglesias, fluffy, but you could argue that's just because he's heavy. He's not really
Yeah.
ugly. He's just
Yeah.
very, very heavy. So, and by the way, Gabriel Iglesias, if you're watching this, I find you really funny, but it's just the idea that comedians have to kind of learn to think on their feet, right? And they kind of have to learn to socialize with people. Joe Rogan's like a very average looking guy, for example. He's not ugly, he's just very average looking.
Yeah.
Same thing with Gabriel Iglesias. If he lost weight, he'd probably be pretty average looking. So put that all together, then you get like this one major outlier, Matt Rife, right, who's pretty funny, but he's also really good looking. That's a really rare person, which is also what makes him really attractive as a human being. Not like for men and women, like people just want to talk to him.
In general, yeah.
So that's an interesting idea, though, that like a lot of comedians and a lot of scientists and stuff like that, are typically not extremely, extremely attractive people. Like comedians more so because they had to learn to be funny in order to, get girls or, get friends or whatever. Whereas a lot of attractive people, like don't really have to develop that as much. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's true. That's true. Because like I find if we look at like the dating world, right? If we're gonna look at like the dating side of things, if we step into that side, you will find like a lot of attractive people don't really tend to focus on their personal development, right? Like right, because I have the looks. Why would I care, right? If we break up today, like I can just like go out there and find another. So like that's where like it comes down to like most of people that are you're normal looking and all that stuff, you don't really care about that stuff because you don't receive things because of how you look. You receive things based on what you're able to provide, right? So like your skills, or if you're able to like do certain things for someone, then like yes, you're going to receive something in return for that based on your hard work, right? But if you're attractive, I could just take a picture of myself, post it on social media. It goes viral just like that. I'm getting attention just like that. My life is changed. I could be a model the next day. You don't even know. Or I could get like some guy sending me a crazy amount of money for no reason at all, right? So yeah, like stuff like that is it's a bit mind blowing to think about, but it's also like the society and that we live in too, right?
Well, yeah. So, like, again, like going back to my point, like most comedians are average to not good looking, right?
Yeah.
Like they're not. Again, I'm not saying they're all like insanely ugly and they have no like they're horrible to look at. I'm not gonna say that, but like the majority of them are not insanely good looking people. The majority of them are like average, a little bit below average. But then like, it's rare to see a hyper attractive comedian or like a super hyper attractive comedian, that's also a bodybuilder and all these other things. It's more common that they're people that learned how to be funny.
Yeah.
So, it's an interesting world to live in, to be like hyper attractive and, because I've also met people that have been really hyper attractive. And I've said this before, that have just really been very weird, have issues, like, because, there's a saying. So it's by I think it's by Robin Williams. It's the three best things that will teach a man are, an empty stomach, a broken heart, and an empty wallet. And if you never had the broken heart, you live in a kind of weird world, like where you're like, oh, I could just get, people love me, people. And I'm not even talking about love. I'm talking about like people in general.
That's
right?
in general, yeah.
Have your trust broken, so on and so forth. So to never have that kind of makes you it doesn't make you a full person. There's like something a little bit incomplete, I feel like. And
it's like the biggest part of you is missing, right? Because as human beings, what we're meant to be is like consistently progressing. That's literally how we develop. You're a baby, you grow. You have to grow. It's part. You have to, right? It's not like I'm gonna choose to be a baby for the rest of my life. Like you have to consistently progress, right? Your DNA is designed to do that. And like it's the exact same thing with our personal skills or whatsoever we're doing in life, right? If you're not consistently progressing, then obviously you're going to be starting looking at things in a different way, right? You're going to have a completely different perspective, which is then like you have that. If you have a pretty privilege, then you're just like, okay, this is normal, right? It's always been like this for me. There's nothing for me to learn from this. And then you go and repeat the exact same thing again, right? Just like you were mentioning. So that's why, like, you have like, if it's something that you have never received before, right? If you were
Right.
young, like no one was like giving you things because of just how you looked, and then you became older, it was the exact same process. Then you start relying on your skills, right? You start relying on things that you actually know. You start relying on things that you really worked hard on, which is why like we have those like really funny comedians that are super smart. We have the smartest scientists and all that stuff that are not really like, the best looking person, but they're relying on like specific skills that they've been able to develop throughout their life, right? But then if you're pretty, you're getting everything like whatever you want without working for it, then why would you
So
want to change that?
So I was gonna say, I think I'm one of the few people that have had personal experience from to actually getting pretty privilege at one point. So
Yeah,
this is a funny story. So like it fluctuates. So my weight, and I always talk about this when I'm with a fitness influencer. So
yeah,
my weight has fluctuated probably more than anybody else in the history of mankind. So I have gone from insanely heavy all the way to like super duper skinny, all the way back
yeah.
to like average weight, which is kind of where I'm at now. But I've also
Mhm.
I've like had these massive weight losses and gains many a times. But there was a point where I went from like 180 all the way down to like 145.
Mhm.
And I always tell the story. I could go in more detail later, but you know, I noticed something really sad. People were starting to be really, really nice to me, like substantially nicer. And I'm not even talking. Like, I mean, girls were also more interested in talking to me. That's another
Yeah.
crazy thing. Unfortunately, I'm not at that weight anymore now. I'm like 170 ish. But like the substantial difference between being super heavy and being like unattractive, and then being like super skinny and like I would assume much more attractive, and how people treat
Mhm.
you and talk to you and are to you is so big. It's
So big.
such a big difference,
Yeah.
because like all of a sudden girls that like had never spoken to me before were like way more interested. People were responding to my text message more often. Like people wanted, like, were smiling more often when they saw me. They would look me in the eye more often, and I'm like, oh, I'm living in like a totally different world. This is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But you know, it's sad. But with that being said, have you ever met somebody who's like the most successful client you've ever had? Going off of this story.
The most successful client. Ooh. It will be a female client. Her name is Ashley. So she was at about 200 pounds. 200 pounds. We actually, funny enough, we went to high school together, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, she was like 200 pounds, and you could tell, like like when someone's like, I mean, like your face, right? You already like know, like you have like you're good looking, and then like once you just like dial down on like the calories and all that stuff, obviously your face leans out a little bit more, right. So like that's basically what like she was like as well. So she was looking at like our old pictures when she was really really younger, skinny and all that stuff. She's like, man, I used to look good, but now like no one even wants to talk to me. No one is even approaching me, right? Like I'll send messages, I'll be on dating apps. Like I'm not really getting like the people that I want to, like, the people that I want to attract and all that stuff. So then like what we did, we went for a grind for like a year and a half, and then she was able to like drop the weight significantly, and her looks completely changed. Completely, her face was leaned out, right? So she started attracting the people that she really wanted to like attract and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, instead of her reaching out to people, people were reaching out to her. Her DMs were getting blown out like crazy and all that stuff, just because of like she lost weight, right? Which also changed the way she looked, right? She was able to actually see, like, bro, I'm not ugly, right? I'm not ugly. The only thing that was hiding, like, how I actually truly looked was just the extra calories that I had on my face. That was really it. So, like, once she did that, then she realized like her life was completely different. Like you were mentioning with yours as well, how like once you really, really lean down, that's what people are really mostly attracted to, right? So then things were completely different for you. It felt like it's a completely new world because you're like, I'm not used to this. I'm not used to all of this attention. It was the exact same thing for her. She was getting a ridiculous amount of attention, and she still does until today. She just decided to stay single because she's like, I'm getting a lot of attention. Why would I want to like date someone now? Because like when I was really super overweight, no one wanted to date me. Right. So no one wanted to actually like hang out with me. People were like, people will see people that know me will see me, but they'll pretend like they don't see me. They don't even want to talk to me just because of how I looked. That's the society that we live in today. Like people are extremely judgmental based on the littlest things, right? They don't try to get to know you. They just like focus on like what is like exterior, right? The outside things, like what can I see from the outside instead of me trying to see what is inside, right? So once all the things for her for the outside change, everything changed for her. So like her work, even with her job, she was able to like get a promotion and like started doing better, right? Because her health also improved and she was able to do things a little bit better and all that stuff. So everything for her got better. But then the way she was started seeing life, like just like you were as well, she was seeing it from a different perspective, right? And then she just realized like, okay, this is actually how it is for most people, right? People that are lean, people that are like good looking or decent looking, they actually get attention. Meanwhile, I was like stuck in the corner in my room all day begging for one person to just pay attention to me. And now hundreds of guys wants my attention, which is like, yeah, it's unreal, bro. It's unreal. Because to me, it's like a happy transformation because not only do you transform your body, but like your whole entire world's changed. Like your view of the world completely changed because you're able to see it in from two different lenses, right? From where you were overweight. I call that a gift because you're able to see things from different side of like, perspectives, right? So I usually call that a gift because not everyone is able to do that. So you're able to see how things were when like you were overweight, like how people were treating you, how people would talk to you, right? And people were extremely disrespectful to her. Like they would even make fun of her because of what she would wear and all that stuff, right? But then once all that changed, instead of them being disrespectful, it was all just compliments. She'll be in the club and be like, oh, look at what you're wearing, all that stuff, right? So like it completely changed, right? It's a different world completely, but it's the same person. Nothing, the only thing that changed was just like how she looked from the outside, right? So for me, I was really, really happy for her because she was able to like experience that and actually be able to see that like, yeah, there's different ways that you can see the world. Everyone has different perspective as well. Based on the stage that you're in life, people will see you in a different light compared to like if 10 years down the road you get like your dream job, you have your dream car, and you're like, you're living a nice life. All the people that didn't want you to be your friends, all of a sudden they're calling your phone and be like, bro, are you trying to hang out today? Which was the exact same thing with her, right? Her friends that didn't want to hang out with her are not like hitting her up to like try to like hang out. Like, so what are you doing today? Do you want to make plans? Just because of how she looked, because of the people that she's able to attract into her life now, that brings like all these other people that like just like, yeah, let me just tag along because like, you're able to attract a specific type of like energy around you, right? So I'm sure like you probably experienced that yourself as well, compared to like, how when like your weight dropped completely, you're like, man, what is going on? I'm still the same dude, but like things are looking different now.
It's crazy. I think having experienced it, it's a totally different world. But
Yeah.
I think to finish off though, what actually, what? I think that's a good place to end off.
Yeah.
Talking about progress and the fact that people can change and they can improve.
Yeah.
So, any final words to the audience? Any final advice?
Um, the final advice for me, and if I was going to say anything, it would just be for you to really, again, I'm going to rephrase this again, shoot for the sky. Literally, the sky is the limit. Always shoot for the sky, right? Shoot for the impossible. And if you're going to do that, you want to make sure that you're progressing towards that goal, right? It could be any type of goal. It could be the gym, it could be the work, it could be whatever. Make sure you're progressing towards it and you're not just taking a big leap over to try to get into that step, that first step right away. You want to take small steps. Mini step each day really makes a big difference, because at the end of the day, for you to reach any goal, it comes down to consistency. And the best way to build consistency is just taking small steps each day. A house, like if I was building a house with bricks, I have to lay one brick at a time. I can't just take 100 bricks and just drop it down and build a house. It's not going to work that way. So it's the exact same process. Just like when you were learning how to read, you had to like first learn the alphabet, learn how it sounds, right? And then you start learning how to put the words together, all that stuff. It's all a process. So sometimes we tend to forget that and just try to skip steps and just, try to get to like the biggest step ever first and then once you get there, you feel disappointed and then you just go back to ground zero. So take your time, shoot for the sky, take your time, take one step at a time. That would be like the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway.
Any other final words to the audience?
That is it for me, though. That is it for me too today.
All right. I'm going to stop the recording. We'll talk a little bit after the show. All right. In 3, 2, 1.